Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Afterburners podcast. Season 2, Bobby. Season 2, we have been renewed for a second season. We took a little bit of a hiatus, but it sounds like the good people want to hear us back. I am your host, Sam Niedermeyer. As always, with me, Bobby Koch and Mike Jarvis, all the way from Canada. Mike, what you been up to in the new year?
Not much. Playing indoor futsal, getting our asses kicked in that.
I understand you took a bit of a loss yesterday.
Yeah, that's an understatement, a bit of a loss. It was a tough match, but we showed progress, let's put it that way.
Fun fact, Mike is playing goalkeeper for his team. I am also playing goalkeeper for my team, but our teams are never going to meet in any type of championship because we're not good enough for international teams. Bobby, how's 2018 treating you? You've been quite busy. Going on some podcasts, writing some articles. Tell the good people what you've been doing.
Yeah, I started working for 2QBs in addition to working to DLF. I've guested on a few different podcasts, most recently the Dynasty Dummies, Open Bar, Dynasty Trades HQ. I've been listening to a lot of Dynasty Game Night. If you're watching our YouTube, I'm wearing their shirt. And I'm excited to be back. We had some tough contract negotiations to bring back this pod. And speaking of contract negotiations, we're going to talk about some results of free agency today. So definitely excited to get into it.
Big day today. Bobby mentioned some contract negotiations. We wanted to get paid for this podcast. No one wanted to pay us. So here we are, Season 2, Episode 1, all free, all because we love Dynasty football. This year, we're going to talk more about quarterbacks, what that means for other weapons around them, how the quarterback situations are playing out in different teams 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, and obviously in college quarterbacks coming up. Today, we're going to go over free agencies. A lot of big names getting signed, a lot of movement. Before we get started, you're going to find us. Where are you going to find Mike on Twitter? Bobby, give your handle. We're going to launch after that.
You can find me on Twitter at Mike Jarvis, all one word.
And you can find me at Rek Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. You can find Sam at The Needy One. That's Needy One with NEDI. And you can find us at Afterburners Pod. Spelled exactly like however you found the show.
It's just like that. Let's get started, guys. First big move of the day comes as no shock if you've read anything over the last week or so. Kirk Cousins going to the Minnesota Vikings, 3 years, $84 million. What does this mean for Kirk Cousins? What does it mean for the Vikings, Mike?
It just means that their weapons got a whole lot better. You look at the quarterback situation they had last year. They started off with Bradford. He went, 2 games? And then transferred over to Case Keenum. And, I'm not taking anything away from Bradford or Keenum. They both had fantastic years. But if I'm Adam Thielen and I'm Stephon Diggs and, even Dalvin Cook and Kyle Rudolph, I want Kirk Cousins throwing me the ball way more than I want either Keenum or Bradford. Cousins, he had okay weapons in Washington. And you look at what he did with those, posting just pretty ridiculous numbers.
With no offensive line.
Yeah, with no offensive line. And then you go into Minnesota, where now you're going to play half your games in a dome. So instead of possibly playing in minus 20 in a blizzard in Washington in beginning of December, now you might get a 70-degree dome in the beginning of December. And you're throwing it way better. So I think that's a bonus for Cousins and his weapons. The only thing that I'll say that might hinder it, and possibly what helped elevate Breeze for all those years of fantasy purposes, the Redskins were often playing from behind, so they'd have to throw the ball to catch up. With that Vikings legitimate top 3 defense in the league, we might not see Kirk have to air it out and throw it as much. You can let Dalvin Cook do his thing, so that might take a little bit of a hit, but overall, I think it's very positive for all parties involved.
And even with the defense they had last year, they didn't have Dalvin, but they still passed 500 or attempted 540 passes, which is still a decently high number. I didn't look exactly how that ranked.
I think it was eighth or ninth in the league.
Yeah, so they were still pretty high up there, even though they had a high defense. The one thing that I'd be concerned about with Cousins, well, there's 2 things. One, Pat Shurmur is gone, and he's now the head coach of the Giants. So we don't really know what the offensive scheme is going to look like. I don't expect it to change all that much, but anytime the offensive coordinator changes, that is something to keep an eye on. And 2, they signed him to reportedly 3 years guaranteed, $84 million. They have extensions coming up for some of their young players, and we're fantasy players, so Most of us, unless we play IDP, don't really care. But they have extensions coming up for Barr, Kendricks, Hunter. But as fantasy players, there is one that we will care about, which is Stephon Diggs is due for an extension soon. And honestly, with the amount of money and cap they've dedicated to Cousins, I could see them letting Diggs walk, letting Thielen be their number one, and hoping that Treadwell pans out because they just won't have the money to sign all those guys now.
It's an interesting take, Mike or Bobby. So, Mike, what do you think? Is there any stock for Laquan Treadwell in, let's say, 2 years?
If it's going to happen, it has to happen this year, I think, entering that pivotal year 3 into the league. I mean, in year 1, he had what, 0 or 1 catches?
Yeah.
And I think I know he did better on that this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it still wasn't great by any means. I think he was less than 20. So, I mean, if you're the Vikings and you're thinking about letting Diggs walk when his extension comes up, Treadwell might be a guy who early in the year could possibly see a lot of targets because they want to see what they have in him if they can let Diggs walk. If they try to get Cousins to feed the ball to Treadwell in the first, 3, 4, 5 games, and he's just a jabroni and dropping passes and not running routes correctly, then I don't think you'll see the Vikings let Diggs walk and have Treadwell as the number 2. They might let Diggs walk still, but they'll move on from Treadwell. I don't think he'll be anything at this point.
Yeah, they probably will have someone else, but I don't necessarily agree that they'll try to see what they have in Treadwell, even if they're thinking that he could be the guy, because signing Kirk Cousins is showing that they're clearly trying to win the Super Bowl this year. And so they're not going to try to develop guys for next year. They're going to throw to whoever gives them the best chance to win games this year, and that's Thielen, Diggs, Cook, and Kyle Rudolph.
We'll give you guys a final question here. Adam Thielen, obviously a wide receiver 1 last year. Does his stock go up even more?
I'm hoping so as a Thielen owner.
Naturally.
He's a guy who I like, but he severely disappointed me on Christmas Eve on a snowy drive home. I had quite a few curse words for him. So I'm hoping his stock goes up. If it does, I'm going to sit on him for a bit. But if I see him fetching a pretty good first-round rookie pick or, a bona fide RB or wide receiver, I'm all in on the sell.
Bobby?
So I was having this conversation with the Dynasty Game Night guys the other day. I'm very high on Adam Thielen.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, my Dynasty rankings, they are not, just to put that out there. So listen to their podcast. But I have him as my Dynasty wide receiver 13. People keep saying, what about Stephon Diggs? What about Stephon Diggs? What about Stephon Diggs? Adam Thielen has outplayed him for 2 seasons. And I'm not a big fan of labeling people as injury prone, but the fact that Diggs keeps having soft tissue injuries is somewhat concerning for him playing a full 16 seasons. And even as I just mentioned, I actually think that Diggs may walk, in which case Thielen could see himself as a wide receiver 1 for Kirk Cousins for years. So I'm all in on Thielen. I think a poll that went out recently was the 103 versus Adam Thielen in terms of rookie picks. I would take Adam Thielen there without a doubt.
Final thought on Cousins to Minnesota. The Vikings last year finished 17th in the NFL with 34.2 pass attempts per game. Washington actually 20th, 33.8. Do with that information as you will. It could be a lot of sacks that were given up to Cousins, or maybe the fact that Minnesota is a little bit more aggressive than we're giving them credit for. Moving on, we have another big signing, this one coming out of Denver. Case Keenum, speaking of Minnesota, he leaves Minnesota, going to the Broncos. He gets 3 years guaranteed. Bobby, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, they're right back in the thick of things, right?
Yeah, and I've been talking about buying Sanders all off season because everyone has been down on him. They go, oh, he's washed up. He can't play anymore. The thing is, 1, he was hurt. He had an ankle injury last season. And 2, he had Trevor Siemian throwing him the ball, who had one of the worst starting quarterback seasons pretty much ever. So Case Keenum, it depends whether you think Keenum is legit or not. I think Keenum is at least somewhat legit. Otherwise, I don't think he would have done what he did in the playoffs or anything like that last year. So if people want to sell Sanders low, I'm happy to buy him. Sanders, just as a quick aside, finished as the wide receiver 62 in full point PPR last season. So you can probably get him very cheap and hope that he recaptures some of his old form, because before that, he was the wide receiver, I believe it was 19 and 19 or somewhere in the top 20 for pretty much the past 3 seasons before that. So I would be looking into acquiring Sanders. Interestingly, Demaryius Thomas still finished as a top 20 option last season despite Trevor Siemian, but I think that his stock will go up a bit too with the move to Keenum.
Trevor Siemian had some of the worst throws I've ever seen an NFL quarterback throw in the year 2017. And I remember seeing the GIFs of Blake Bortles in preseason, and Siemian did not outpass him. Mike, is Keenum going to be the answer for Denver there? Where do you see him ranking in terms of quarterbacks for 2018?
I don't think he'll be the answer necessarily. I think he's an upgrade over Siemian, but hell, I think Uncle Rico is an upgrade over Trevor Siemian. So
I throw a football over the mountain, man.
Exactly. I know Bobby was plugging Manny Sanders here. And so here's the thing. Quick, off the top of your head, without looking, how many touchdowns does Manny Sanders have in the last 2 years combined?
Is it 4?
It's not.
Is it
6?
You're close. It's 7.
Oh.
So this is a guy who has 7 touchdowns in 2 years combined. In 2016, he caught 77 or 79 balls for 1,032 yards, but he still only had 5 touchdowns, even when he was a supposed, low end or high mid-tier WR2. He's just not that good, in my opinion. Plus,
I completely disagree, but this is also, we've had this debate many times.
we have. Plus,
I think that chasing touchdowns is a good thing to do, and that's why you think Julio sucks. Whereas I rather get a guy who catches the ball all the time, builds up the receiving yards, and hope the touchdowns will come. Because the guys you like, if they don't get touchdowns, guess what? They're in the crapper. Wah, wah.
Finish him.
right, you're absolutely right. But let's put it this way: for a touchdown magnet, a guy like AB, he grabs a 20-yard touchdown, let's say, and we'll use half-point PPR. That's 8.5 points right there on one play. Whereas a guy like Manny Sanders, to get 8.5 points, probably needs, realistically, 3-4 completions to go his way. Yes, I agree with you in that touchdowns can be fluky and it's a bad thing to chase. But if you can nail it, it's also a hell of a, not a game breaker, but it definitely gives you an advantage.
Well,
Plus,
all I can say is I will gladly take the guys who get receptions and yards and maybe don't get as high as touchdowns while everyone overvalues the quote-unquote sexy guys.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely something to be said for that. Also, Manny Sanders is going to be 31 years old here in a few months. Same with DT. Manny Sanders is going to be 31 this Saturday.
No, happy birthday, Manny Sanders.
I will say, yeah, happy birthday, Sanders. And Mike, you got a point there. I think DT's more likely to sustain the success
Right.
with the way his body's built. Emmanuel Sanders is kind of a shorter guy, and they typically don't last longer in the NFL.
No, I mean, there was the one game this year, I think it was week 11 or 12. It was the Sunday night game, Denver and I don't remember who they were playing. But Manny Sanders had like 7 or 8 grabs for 130 yards or something like that in the first half. And I thought, oh shit, like he's going to go off this week. And then went absolutely invisible in the second half. He didn't even catch a ball. And with Sanders, you're going to get a lot of games like that, in my opinion.
7 or 8 grabs for 130 yards. A lot of games of 7 or 8 grabs for 130 yards, Mike. I would take that every single week.
Yeah, no shit you would. But then absolutely invincible in the second half.
It doesn't matter. He's still got those 7 or 8 grabs for 130 yards. I don't give a shit if he does nothing for a quarter if he has 7 or 8 grabs for 130 yards in the first quarter.
Let's flip it to Case Keenum real quick, guys. Last year, he finished with 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, over 230 fantasy points in all of standard leagues. Great numbers. Does he see improvement there? It's about the same or regression?
I'll say regression. I don't think it'll be
Not the same.
Sorry.
I don't think it'll be a big regression, but I think we'll knock 10% off of 10 to 15% off of all those numbers that he had.
So that means you still think he'd be, at least last year, quarterback 2 probably, because he was Just for everyone out there who thinks, oh, Case Keenum, that guy came out of nowhere, he sucks. For fantasy purposes, he was the QB 14 last season.
Yeah, I definitely still think he'll be a quarterback too. I just don't think we'll see 230-ish fantasy points. I think we can see, 210, give or take.
Yeah, I think he'll be like a middling QB2. I don't know about QB 14 again, but maybe somewhere in the like 16 to 18 range.
Yeah, I think
a bit lower.
I think that's definitely in the realm of possibility.
In 5 games in 2015 with the St. Louis Rams. Yes, the St. Louis Rams. Keenum threw 130 yards and 4 touchdowns, only 1 pick. Not bad numbers, but then he went under the Jeff Fisher curse last year. Came back strong this year. Let's see if he does it again. Another big signing, quarterback. And if Chris Farley were alive, he would definitely be on this podcast saying, Bears, and choking on a buffalo wing as he goes back and forth saying, ah. But Mitchell Trubisky getting some weapons today from the Bears, signing both Allen Robinson and Trey Burton, big wide receiver name, solid tight end. What does this mean for Trubisky? Is he starting to move up in the world of fantasy, Mike?
Oh, yeah. He's going from guys like Kevin White and
his top receiver last year was Kendall Wright. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, not Kevin White, Kendall Wright.
Well, Kevin White was there too. He was just hurt.
Who?
Kevin White and Kendall Wright are both Bears. It's just Kevin White was hurt, as he always is.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you plug basically anything more than a warm body into the lineup for the Bears, and it's going to improve Trubisky. I think Trubisky's one of those guys that I'd like to see what he can really do. I'll admit I didn't watch a lot of college tape, so I didn't really see him play in college. So I really only saw about 2 Bears games last year, give or take. But he's one of those dual threats. He seems to like to run a lot. Like he looked like he averaged maybe 30 to 45 rushing yards a game. So that's pretty decent for a quarterback.
He had 248 rushing yards on the season. I don't know how many that was per game, but I looked it up earlier.
How many games did he play?
I
believe
7.
he started in week 5, maybe week 4.
Okay, so that's probably about 60 rushing yards a game on average.
Or actually, Sam has it up right now, so it looks like he played in 12 total games.
Okay, and he rushed for 230 yards, you said?
248, and he had 2 rushing touchdowns as well.
Oh, so 20 yards a game. That was a little off.
No, I mean but 20 yards isn't anything that's terrible or anything like that. Bobby, you've been studying Mitchell Trubisky quite a bit. You're kind of high on him. Is he going to enter like QB2 realm?
First of all, yes, absolutely, he's going to enter QB2 realm. I think I have until recently. I was only in 4 dynasty leagues. In 3 of the 4, I had Mitchell Trubisky because I thought he was going to be something. Last season, he didn't really show that much, but he wasn't really given an opportunity to. And as Mike mentioned, he didn't have great wide receivers or pass catchers in general. They've made a ton of changes. They hired Matt Nagy from the Chiefs. He was a great offensive coordinator. They've made a bunch of coaching hires in general that I really like. They just signed Allen Robinson. They signed Trey Burton. So I'm very high on Trubisky, and I think that he will not only be a quarterback too, but I'm going to say for the first time on this podcast that in the year 2018, Mitchell Trubisky will be a high-end quarterback too. So if I said Keenum's going to finish in that 16 to 18 range, I'm going to say that Trubisky is going to finish somewhere in the 13 to 15 range.
Mike, do you agree with that? High-end QB2?
I would put him more in the mid QB2. I would say it's probably about the 15. Yeah, I'd say it's probably 15 to 18, give or take.
So about the same as Case Keenum?
Yeah. I like what the Bears have done for the additions. I mean, getting Robinson and Burton have definitely helped. The Bears still need to address the O-line a little bit. True got put on his back like 30-some-odd times last year. So that's not something that you definitely want to see at all. So, I mean, if they can address the O-line, they got to play the Vikings defense twice. The Lions defense is no joke. It's not as good as the Vikings, but it's pretty solid. And the Pack is the Pack, and it's always tough to go into Lambeau and play.
Yeah, the Packers defense in recent years has been pretty trash, though.
Oh yeah, but I mean, their offense is, A plus. So
yeah, that only helps Trubisky's case.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Throw a lot.
That's what I was getting at. That'll help them. But I would put them 15 to 18, somewhere around there.
Guys, what about Trey Burton? This is the part of the equation that really intrigued me. Allen Robinson's good, don't get me wrong, but I really like tight ends to help out young quarterbacks that are learning the system. You can see tight ends historically. I don't have any numbers other than my gut, so look at those stats. But you get these guys that come into safety valves, and tight ends can produce a lot of catches. How does Trey Burton stack up here? I kind of like him in terms of not just this year, but perhaps the next 3 years in Dynasty.
So Trey Burton, off the top of my head, when he was filling in for Ertz, he had, 3 or 4 touchdowns, maybe 5?
Something like that. I'm looking it up right now.
In that case, so I like Trey Burton, not just because he was part of the trick play in the Super Bowl to help the Eagles win, but just because I actually believe that he's a good tight end. And I agree with Sam that a good tight end acts as a security blanket or a safety blanket. So if Mitchell Trubisky is Linus, then Trey Burton is about to be his new favorite blanket that he takes everywhere with him. It also just adds another red zone threat for the Bears that they desperately needed. Both him and A-Rob now give Trubisky that guy to throw to when they get into the red zone, which is really important. And I also think that we can't lose sight of the fact that they have 2 threats over the middle now, and that's Trey Burton and Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen is another guy that can catch dump-off passes from Mitchell Trubisky, but he can also run over the middle and take attention off Trey Burton and allow Trey Burton to get a bit more open. So maybe I'm secretly a Bears fan, guys, but I'm very, very high on this offense.
Follow that up.
Yeah. I mean, last year Burton had 23 receptions for 248 yards, averaged 16 and a half yards a game, 5 touchdowns. That's pretty good numbers for, basically a part-time player. I have Trey Burton. I picked him up at the end of the year last year as a flyer because I had Olsen hurt and I needed somebody. And I thought, hey, this guy might be worth a grab, going forward. So I'm pretty happy that I did. It's definitely helps the younger quarterbacks, like Sam was saying, because often your tight end isn't your first read, so you can go through your first, second, third progression. Once the tight end makes his block, he can release out into the flat and catch a little 7-8 yard dump off pass. So that should help. Trey Burton should catch a lot of those little dump off passes, and he's a pretty big boy, so it'll be, like Bobby said, good to have another red zone threat. Because you got to figure Allen Robinson's probably going to receive double coverage down the red zone. So Burton should be open.
So quick hit, guys. Trey Burton, tight end 1, tight end 2, ranking?
2.
T2.
I put him 14th-ish.
I was actually going to say 14. That's the exact number I was going to say.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
Whoa, all 3 of us agreed on something. I think that's
amazing. They mark it down in history.
Well, so I guess that's the end of season 2, guys. See you all later.
I think on a final note, the nickname for Mitchell Trubisky is probably worth noting. He is called Mr. Biscuit by his teammates.
Called, but in the Dynasty community, he's called Truth Biscuit.
What? You're going to just steal my thunder right now? I've been waiting to say this Mr. Biscuit for the last 5 to 6 minutes.
Well, all right. Sorry. Also, I personally like to call him Super Trooper, so if we can start calling him Super Trooper instead.
How about Super Biscuit?
No, Super Trooper.
You know what?
Super Trooper.
You got to risk it to get the biscuit sometimes. We're going
to risk it as – oh, yeah, we do have to give him his one mention. This is somewhat of an inside joke, but for those of you who don't know, we play with someone named Mark Walton, very funny guy on Twitter. And if we don't mention him, he doesn't listen to our podcast. So that's our
listens anyways.
That's our quick plug. I don't care. I'm doing it anyway.
You're just saying it? You're just mentioning it?
Yeah, that's it.
The people want the last 4 minutes of their life back. Moving on, guys. We got another big signing, possibly perhaps the biggest risk-reward guy at wide receiver in the history of fantasy football. That's Sammy Watkins going over to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now with the loss of Alex Smith going over to the Redskins, you got Patrick Mahomes going in there to start for the Chiefs. They got Travis Kelce. They got Tyreek Hill. They got Kareem Hunt. What's going on with Sam? I mean, number one, Patrick Mahomes has pretty much every weapon at his disposal, so they are all on board with him and that offense. But number two, is it going to matter? Is Mahomes actually good, Mike?
I think Mahomes is good. Like I said, admittedly, I didn't watch a lot of college football, but the stuff that I have seen on Mahomes, he's got a hell of an arm. Although I saw a funny thing going back to Sammy Watkins on Twitter today from a guy who I just recently started following a couple months ago, Addison Hayes. Addison said, Sammy Watkins went from a team where he was a wide receiver 3 with a good young quarterback and an offensive-minded head coach, and he's going to the exact same situation. And now all of a sudden everybody loves Sammy Watkins. What gives?
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I've gotten a lot of people that are angry at me in my Twitter mentions today because I said, from a real football or something to the effect of from a real football perspective, this is great for the Chiefs. From a fantasy perspective, it's terrible for Sammy.
Yeah. There's so many weapons there.
Right. Kelce and Hill are going to be your number 1 and 2 for sure.
I mean, he and Hill might split targets. It's just so there have been a few teams that have had 3 wide receivers or 3 pass catchers, get 100 targets. But most of them had nothing for a run game and were playing from behind often, or they Drew Brees throwing the ball.
Right.
Just as a side note, real quick, Mike mentioned Addison Hayes. He is at AmazeHayes_Roto. Really good follow for anybody in the fantasy football community. He knows his shit, brings a lot of statistics together.
Don't say that. He'll get a big head. I'm constantly in a Twitter feud with Addison. I do. So don't get me wrong. I love Addison, actually, but I do often disagree with his takes, and then he just goes on about how right he always is and how he's never wrong. But I will give him a quick plug. He created a website called ffstatistics.com. I use it frequently for my articles. You can check out yearly ranks for players in terms of fantasy points, weekly ranks, a bunch of different things on there. It's a great database and resource. So good job there, Addison. I hope your head doesn't get too big.
Yeah, and it definitely will. Going back to Mahomes real quick, I mean, that's a lot. He's got a lot of weapons that is obviously going to help him out, ideally. If we were to rank him, now last year, obviously, he only played in about one, I think it was only one game.
He made one start.
One start, okay, thank you. He's going to obviously, barring injury, barring health, he'll start every game. He'll be the starter. The Chiefs are all in on him. Is he gonna be a QB2 or a QB1? I mean, he kind of has to be, right?
I don't think he'll be a 1. I think he'll be
2, right? Like he's going to be like
definitely a 2. I think he's just outside QB1. I would put him like 13, 14.
I'm with Mike. I put him in the same range that I put Trubisky. And I know most people disagree and say you have Mahomes and Trubisky around the same, but I do actually. And part of that is because while I like Jordan Howard, Mahomes has Kareem Hunt and Spencer Ware. He also has Andy Reid coaching. And Andy Reid loves his run game. If he has a strong run game, he loves to use it. And unlike Trubisky, Mahomes is actually just really, this is more or less his rookie season, even though he had that one start last year. So he needs to get some experience before they start just letting him attempt, 30, 40 attempts a game, maybe 30 he'll do. But Trubisky will be allowed to really open it up as he was in the second half of the season. And that's why I have them around the same. Long term, gun to my head, I'd probably say Mahomes is a better dynasty asset. But for this upcoming season, I may want Trubisky over Mahomes, and I realize that's going to be a very hot when this episode comes out on Twitter.
Yeah, I would still take Mahomes over Trubisky going forward and this year. I like the potential from Mahomes better. You brought up a good point that this is his rookie year, and so he may be treated with kid gloves a little bit. Also, I just realized that Patrick Mahomes and I share a birthday, so he's now one of my boys. But he played one game.
Like Eskimo brothers.
We are Eskimo brothers. We're not going to the EBDB. But he started in Week 17 last year against Denver, 22 for 35 for 284 yards, no TDs, 1 pick, sacked twice. He rushed 7 times for 10 yards. So that's not anything.
I watched that game. He made a really good throw in that game that I was very impressed by. I'm not saying that I don't think he doesn't have talent. I think he's very, very talented. I just think that what I call the rookie cap will be put on him, where they won't necessarily trust him to win the game for them by having to throw a ton, but they'll try to give him a few easy throws to build some confidence and rely on the run game, at least early in the season, is my guess.
Yeah, though Alex Smith was the exact same way in Kansas City the last 4 years.
Yeah, at least initially. I mean, he has a much bigger arm than Smith, but he will eventually the training wheels will be taken off. I just think that he will have training wheels on for at least part of the season.
Bobby mentioned a few minutes ago that Andy Reid loves to use the run game. I think Kareem Hunt owners would disagree with you, especially after he had about 40 touches the first 2-3 weeks, and then he just kind of evaporated with like 5 touches a half in week 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So
yeah, and then
I tend to agree with you, Bobby. He does like the running game.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, he just went bonkers again too. So
I am a Kareem Hunt fantasy owner in many leagues, and I still believe in him. I've heard some people say that they don't think he's going to finish top 12. With the new offensive pieces, when you think about it, they're going to be, I think, in the red zone a lot. And depending what they do there, he could potentially score more touchdowns than he did last season because of opportunities. When your offense is good, you get near the red zone a lot, and you get more rushing opportunities in the red zone, which could potentially lead to more touchdowns. So there's my defense of Kareem Hunt very quickly.
The Kareem Hunt defense, done by Mr. Bobby Koch, Esquire. That's the defense is for attorney stuff, right? Like legalities and things like that. Guys, we're running out of time, so we're going to go on quick hits next. We're going to go over a couple quarterbacks, and finally one more position that could be open on the NFC West that we need to discuss who's going to end up on the Cardinals. But number one, Drew Brees gets re-signed by the Saints. Mike, you're a Saints fan. Hit us with something quick on your thoughts there.
I got into a rather heated Twitter discussion with a baseball league mate about this.
He's just to add there, because I know you don't know this, he's a former Dynasty League football writer too, so he definitely knows his stuff about football.
Okay. New point. Anyway,
Mike's like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. He's still wrong.
He's still wrong. He did bring up some good points. His name's Aaron at FF Aaronis. And he posted something the other day. I think it was Thursday or Friday, that it wasn't as cut and dry that Brees would be back with the Saints. And I said, as a Saints fan, I feel 100% confident he will be back. They want him back. He wants to be back. And it really wasn't until yesterday that I started to get a little bit worried. But I'm happy to have Brees back. I did believe in my heart of hearts that he would be back. It just made too much sense. I could see it, and like I said to Aaron, I could see it if they finished, 7-9 again, and Brees is getting up there and was like, well, shit, I really want another ring. But they were one missed tackle away from going to the NFC Championship game last year, and without 5 or 6 starters on their defensive side. So why would Brees not come back to the city that loves him? He loves them, and go for it and end his career. And I know that this probably doesn't have any bearing into people's decisions, but think of it this way. If Brees left New Orleans for, say, Minnesota, or I even heard the Jets, and some people trying to say Cleveland, if he left or the Saints to go to, the Jets or Cleveland because they offered him $5 million more per year, would he not become the ultimate villain?
I don't know, man. I would think that the people in New Orleans are still going to love him for what he did. 1, with the Saints, and 2, for that community. It'd be hard to be for them to hate him, right? I mean, what would you?
The old saying goes, either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain.
The old saying, which is from what, Batman, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not so sure about that. I think, and maybe I'm just a more reasonable fan. I understand that it's a business. I agree with Sam that and I'm with you, Mike. Most fans don't understand that it's a business, and they go, "This guy left us for more money. Yeah. He sucks."
Everyone does that every day in every job.
But in this case, I think Brees did enough for that community, like Sam said, especially after Katrina, that if they may still turn on him, just because I'm pretty cynical about people. But if they did, I wouldn't think Drew Brees is a jerk. I would think all of the people in New Orleans are jerks.
Right. So generally people are shitbags. I won't disagree with that. And like Sam said, people leave jobs every day for more money. So the difference with everyday people is that goes from making $40,000 a year to $45,000 or $50,000 a year.
Look,
it's not $25 million a year.
Okay,
$30 million a year.
fair enough. But if I had the opportunity, I would leave $25 million for $30 million.
Yeah, five. I mean, we say this all the time, but $5 million does make a difference, and I can't specify who because I signed a contract a long time ago that I wouldn't. But I used to work in an accounting firm, and I went through the books of a former superstar athlete, and he was broke as hell. And
right, but how many Lamborghinis did he have?
Yeah, football's not guaranteed.
Yeah, well, he did have some guarantees, but he was paid.
Yeah, but it's not all of it's not. It's not like baseball.
He was still Grant. He was paid a ton over the course of his career. He made a ton of bad financial decisions. I'll give you that. But I'm just saying, making more money is never a bad thing.
No. It's probably 75% of every ex-football player ever that you're talking about.
Yeah, and making more money is never a bad thing, and I agree with that. But at some point, you've made a lot. You've made enough money. I would probably never make $30 million in my life.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. We got to move on. We got to move on to the next one. Blake Bortles, speaking of making a lot of money, he re-signs with Jaguar.
The GOAT.
Yeah, right, the GOAT. Bobby, give us something that's substantial with Blake Bortles re-signing with the Jaguars. Is this a big deal?
This is a big deal. And I recently wrote an article for 2QBs.com.
And this is the only reason we're bringing up Blake Bortles is so that we could plug your article.
Hey. And I compared Blake Bortles to Batman because he's not necessarily the hero that anybody thinks they need.
You're stealing my line. I use this all the time.
But he's the hero you deserve. And I can't find the exact stats that I pulled up. But when I did research, I was actually really pleasantly surprised with Bortles, where I think it was something like 3 seasons or 4 seasons into his career, he was pretty high on the passing touchdown list.
Yeah.
The thing is, this season, he was incredibly efficient with his passes. In the past, it's always been, he had big volume because he was passing because they were always playing from behind. First of all, to that point, garbage time points still matter. I don't know why fantasy players always bring up garbage time as if those points don't count.
Dude, I love garbage time.
They still
those
count.
Those are the best points.
Second of all,
fucking rules.
Yeah.
He was winning games this season, or the Jags were winning games. He passed way less than he has in the past. And he still managed to be, I believe, a QB1 or maybe low-end QB2. Or high-end QB2. And Leonard Fournette.
Fantasy points. I think that's QB1.
Yeah, Leonard Fournette really helped him out there. But he's gotten more efficient with his passes. Every single year that he's been in the league, even when he had that down year last season, his interception percentage has actually gotten lower, meaning he's getting smarter with his throws. So I am all in on Bortles. It's not
a little bit this year.
No, I went down.
Bortles was
interception percentage. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know my Bortles stats. And it's not just because the good place loves Blake Bortles. That's part of it. It's also made my fiance love Bortles. It's because I love Blake Bortles. I love Tom Coughlin. They actually just signed Andrew Norwell, so at this point, that was another target I wanted for the Giants. I feel like I should just become a full-on Jaguars fan and join my good friend Zach.
Mike, give me something else on Blake Bortles really quick, and don't fillet him.
Blake Bortles has never beaten The Undertaker at WrestleMania.
Yes. I think that's the ending on Blake Bortles. Guys, real quick, give me one name. Who starts at quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals in 2018 opening day?
Somebody that's not currently under an NFL contract right now.
Glennon?
I already I heard rumors of Glennon. I called my shot early in the offseason and said Case Keenum, so I was already wrong.
I'm going to say undrafted rookie who they draft.
I'll double down now and say A.J. McCarron is the starter for the Cardinals.
Wow.
That's a good one, actually.
I like that. That's bold. All right, guys. This was fun, but we are on to our final piece of every single episode. I think it's our most fun personal vendetta thing that we do every week. We're doing our Afterburners of the week. Who wants to start us off with their Afterburn of the week? And actually, let me raise, since this is season 2, episode 1, it can be since season 1 that you have an Afterburn maybe of the month. Who wants to get started?
Mike, you got anything?
I got two. I'm going to burn you two jabronis for what appears you're not drinking any alcoholic beverages.
It's 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, for God's sake.
What's your point? I'm over here drinking Old Milwaukee like a fucking champ.
I got an important phone call at 4 that I got to prep for. That's my excuse.
Okay.
I do have an excuse. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to drink after my procedure.
Yeah, they told me that too. Guess what I had? Anyways, and to that point, I just want to bring something up. For those watching on our YouTube channel, I'm using the Hockey Bar beer koozie. It's a great new company started by Chris Dose of Anti-Flag. It's trying to bring the community together and, to show that hockey really is for everybody. So go check out the Hockey Bar on Twitter. They're just at the Hockey Bar. Chris is a great guy, does great things and great work. So I just wanted to get that plug in. That's a shameless plug.
Hockey lives matter.
Hockey lives matter. Also, as much as it pains me to say, I'm going to burn Williams from the Saints for that missed tackle in the NFC game. And the NFC divisional.
Maybe you should pour the rest of that beer out for your Saints.
I should pour it down my fucking throat for the Saints. I've been a Saints fan for years. I've been a sports fan for years. Never in my life have I been as sick from a sporting event as watching that one play. I get what he was trying to do, and the kid showed a lot of promise this year. Without that pick that he makes early in the third quarter, the Saints aren't even in that game. But man, that hurt. As Bobby knows, and I'm sure Sam knows, and anybody else who I talked to on Twitter, I was fairly distraught. And
pretty sure you stayed off Twitter for a while.
A couple days. I was in no mood to talk to people.
Yeah, you and me both after that entire day, because I'm a Steelers fan, and they lost the exact same day as the Saints.
Right. Yeah, I watched the end of that game at work. So I was actually at work during the Saints game, and there's a TV right directly to my left where I sit at work, and they had the game on. So I had to literally sit there with my hand like this all night, and I had earphones in because I could hear people talking about the game in the crowd, and I was PVRing the game. I didn't want to know.
It's like a dude in a jockstrap, just gyrating this junk right in front of your face.
Exactly. So those are my afterburners. Bobby, what do you got?
So I guess I'm going to stick with a football-related one, just because the other one I was thinking of was kind of dumb anyway. So mine is for anybody, and I mean anybody, who thinks that the Giants should not draft a quarterback with their number 2 pick or trade down still in the first round and take a quarterback. You're just wrong. I'm sorry, but you're wrong. We have a 37-year-old aging quarterback who's been declining the past few seasons. He's not the future of this team. You can't assume that we're going to be picking this high again anytime soon. And if you do, then why is Eli starting for us anyway? So with that said, if you don't think we should be taking a quarterback, you're just wrong, and you should stop tweeting at me on Twitter about it, saying anytime that I say we should take a quarterback that I'm wrong, because no, you're wrong and you need to look in the mirror. That's what I got.
There you go. I got 2 burns too. I'll make them quick. Number 1, I was hanging out at a bar, which is kind of near Bobby's apartment, last week after my futsal game. By the way, playoffs start on Thursday. Sorry about your team, Mike. We were approached by 3, I don't want to say very attractive ladies, but definitely 3 ladies that were not on the par of what I would deem acceptable at that point in the night, maybe give it 4 or 5 more drinks, yes. She saw my University of South Carolina and said, "Oh my God, my cousin went there." Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like,
right.
How am I supposed to intrigue the conversation right there, right? Like, ladies, if you're going to approach a gentleman, and I know there's probably a million ladies listening to this podcast, you can't start it with something as stupid as that, because it's a giant university, and I'm not going to know everyone there. Shocker, I know. And then I kind of burned them, and I felt really bad. So maybe the burn's on me. Second burn goes out to my buddy Bobby right here at Wrecked Fantasy. His tweet last night. We are pretty cute, I guess. Happy fourth anniversary to his fiancée.
Starting my anniversary date on the first episode.
The thing about it, Bobby, is that you're not cute. Your fiance, Grace, is cute.
All right.
So I don't know if you're allowed to say we are. Like, I get it, averaging out. You guys are like, you make like a medium average, but you bring it like way down compared to Grace. So you're actually
I'll
my
have
bird
it
of the
known we
week.
were approached by the marketing team for the Rangers to see if they could use our picture as promotional material. I had to sign a waiver and everything. So regardless, maybe I'm not that cute. Maybe Grace is just insanely cute. Our pictures were good. Also, I'll accept that. If you want to say I'm ugly and my fiance is really cute, go for it, because that means I did really well for a very ugly person. So thank you.
Very good job for going up in the relationship, Bobby. Guys, this was a lot of fun. Season 2 starting off on fire. We got a lot more content for the listeners out there in terms of directing on quarterbacks, specifically in how it relates to Dynasty football. We're running out of time, so Mike, say your goodbyes. Let us know where we can find you, and let's call it a day.
Yeah, it's been fun. You guys can find me on Twitter at Mike Jarvis, all one word. That's Gervais. I'm just starting to get back into football over the grieving process. It took 3 months, so I'm going to try to tweet out some hopefully relevant content soon. Right now, it's just all EPL football that I'm tweeting and baseball. But over to you, Bobby.
You can find me at Rekt Fantasy. That's REKED Fantasy. For those of you who don't know from the millions of podcasts that I've guested on, that's my initials. It's not me trying to be hardcore or like Wreck-It Ralph, though I do like the movie Wreck-It Ralph. You can find my work at Dynasty League Football as well as 2 quarterbacks, and I'm constantly on Twitter and have an addiction to Dynasty football.
Guys, you can find me at the Needy One, TheNeedione. Also, we are at Afterburners Pod on Twitter. You can find us on iTunes, the Afterburners Podcast, and on Podbean as well. Of course, this is our YouTube channel. If you're watching us, feel free to comment on how ugly the three of us are and how we have for radio and podcast. Guys, thanks so much for listening. We're going to throw out some more questions to you out in the audience and Twitter, so feel free to chime in, give us your thoughts, and we'll also be looking for some guests this year to Afterburn as well. Thanks a lot. Have a great week. Enjoy the free agency period.
Keep it classy, Fantasy Twitter.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, 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 the ring of